People have long said that the culture war is a sideshow to the real business of governance. But this is no longer true. The culture war wins and loses elections. Donald Trump's victory was largely enabled by a backlash against what was perceived as political correctness, whereas Hillary Clinton's attempt to divide the electorate up according to group identity clearly backfired. Even our own referendum about our membership of an international trading bloc degenerated into mudslinging, with Leave voters constantly smeared as racist and bigoted, even though studies repeatedly show that we live in one of the least racist countries in the world. An important question about the future of our democracy was misrepresented, in other words, as a question of good versus evil, a bit like Disney, but without all the catchy show tunes to make it worthwhile. And this is because culture warriors are largely fighting monsters of their own imagination. There was a large protest in London a couple of days ago. People were protesting for trans rights. And while I support anyone's right to protest peacefully, it isn't clear to me what rights trans people don't already have. One protester carried this placard: "You're ignoring the start of trans genocide." I don't disbelieve that this person honestly thinks there's a genocide going on, but on what possible grounds? There have been no murders of trans people in the UK for 3 years, and only 8 have been killed since reporting began in 2008. None at all in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. It's the same story across Europe, with 26 European countries reporting no murders of trans people in the same period. Of course, any violence towards trans people is unacceptable. It's just thankfully not very common. And of course, just because I've never met anyone who hates trans people, that doesn't mean they don't exist. And of course, there are people who are discriminated against for the way they identify. But the point is that such discrimination is already illegal. Everyone in the UK has equal rights under the law. There are societal problems, as there will always be. Genocide? Really? This is why the culture wars only ever seem to escalate, because people are determined to see evil everywhere and to mischaracterise those who disagree with them. Look at the reaction of culture warriors to the Conservative Party leadership race. Jolyon Maugham, the barrister most famous for beating a fox to death with a baseball bat while wearing a kimono, posted this tweet directly to Rishi Sunak: "Do you think the members of your party are ready to select a brown man, Rishi?" And what about this from the activist Dr. Shola Moshogbamimu? Now, in this tweet, she's claiming that Tory leadership candidate Kemi Badenoch seeks to enable white supremacy against black people, even though Badenoch is black. And Dr. Shola finishes her tweet with the charming phrase, "She can crawl back into her mother." Why is it that so many of these activists who claim to be on the right side of history are so unpleasant and lacking in basic human empathy? And then there's this from Nadine White, the race correspondent for The Independent. Can you imagine a black or Asian person leading the Conservative Party? Well, yes, we can, because Boris Johnson's cabinet was the most ethnically diverse ever. And whatever you think about the Tories, they've had far more ethnic minority cabinet ministers than Labour ever has. 3 times as many, in fact. So anyone asking this question is obviously so committed to their fantasy world that they can no longer pull away from it. Culture warriors reduce everything to good and evil, and they tend to do so along the lines of group identity. This is why they call everyone who disagrees with them on any point racist, homophobic, transphobic, even fascist. And when decent people who believe in equal rights for everyone are smeared in this way, they naturally become resentful. But this is the lesson lost on the culture warriors. You'd have thought that having called everyone racist if they supported leaving the EU and then losing that referendum, and then calling anyone who supported the Tories racist and losing the general election too, these people might reflect and understand that maybe calling everyone racist isn't exactly a winning strategy. But no, obviously, it's just that they didn't call people racist enough. And now they're even saying that a black candidate for the Tory leadership would be complicit in white supremacy. This is nuts. So we're dealing with fantasists here, but they are powerful fantasists. Culture warriors have infiltrated all of our major educational, artistic, civic and corporate institutions. They're completely entitled to have a voice, of course, but at the moment they are dominating society with their bullying and intimidating tactics. Why else would schools be teaching kids that there are over 100 genders? Why else would councils be removing statues and renaming streets, even though poll after poll reveals that only a very small minority are supportive of such revisionism? Why else would employees at major corporations be sitting through training sessions which berate them for their white privilege and unconscious biases? Why else would the College of Policing, the body that instructs our law enforcement agencies, be ignoring the High Courts and the Home Secretary when they're told that the investigation of non-crime hate incidents is unlawful? And the Tories have frankly been hopeless at addressing this problem. They've even contributed to it. Labour have been somewhat worse, but at least they're not in power. Yet. So actually, it is important that our next Prime Minister knows what a woman is and is brave enough to say it out loud. It is important that our next Prime Minister stops kowtowing to activists who say we need to erase our cultural heritage, remove books from shelves that they find offensive, and put the luminaries on the past on trial for wrongthink. It is important that our next Prime Minister asserts the centrality of freedom of speech, without which none of our other freedoms can possibly exist. That's why the Tories need to choose a new leader who is actually going to tackle these culture warriors, these fantasists who are trying to drag us all onto their fairy tale battlefield to scrap with the ghosts of their fevered imaginations. While activists have so much power in society, you need a government that is willing to stand up to them.